A formal welcome to this interactive webinar on approach to a limping child, current concept. So we'll be discussing the recent trends, the clinical assessment of a child who has come with limp in your clinic, or even if any of your a known patient has a limping child, you can always have a basic idea of how to diagnose them, how to approach them, and how to come to a diagnosis. So I'm Dr. Ratnav. I am a pediatric orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist at CKB Hospital, Gurgaon. So this article reveals a fact that a subtle limp can be a symptom of an grave underlying disorder, as in a pediatric leukemia. So 18 to 20% leukemias can actually present as a limping episode in a child. So that is why it's so important to carefully evaluate a limp. A child who has been walking normally before an episode and has suddenly gone into a severe limp, which can be painful or a painless, or which is affecting the running capability of the child. So that is how it's important to diagnose them properly and carefully assess them. Now, what is a limp? Before we answer this question, we should know what is a normal gait pattern. So any alteration from the normal gait pattern is a limp, right? So a basic adult gait cycle is divided into two parts. That's the stance phase and the swing phase. The stance phase is when we load our feet on the ground, and swing phase is when it's in the air. So the stance phase, which comprises 60% of the cycle, starts with a heel strike and then goes into the foot flat or the loading response, then the mid stance, then the terminal stance, and the pre-swing phase. The swing phase starts with the initial swing, the mid swing, and the terminal swing. So this adult gait pattern usually sets in by 7 years of age, and any deviation or any pathology which affects any of these components, either from the heel strike till the terminal swing phase, can affect the gait and lead to a limp. So what is a normal gait pattern in a child? So a toddler, a child who is less than 2 to 3 years of age, usually walks with a wide based gait, which is externally rotated, walks with a foot which is outside, turned outside, has numerous small steps. That means they walk fast and they are not symmetric in this age. So that is called as the cadence. Cadence means the number of steps per minute. And these kids, because of the lack of maturity of the central nervous system, they usually walk with flat foot. It may be a waddling gait because the nervous system hasn't matured, and they usually walk with a lot of hip and knee flexion. So that is a normal gait. So any child walking like that should not be considered to be having an abnormal gait. And in-toeing in kids till 6 to 7 years of age is again very common and needs to be assessed for femoral anteversion and metatarsal adductors. Because the reciprocal arm motion has not developed, so they can walk with arms outstretched for balance, and they may fall frequently, of course, right? And heel strike usually develops beyond 1.5 years of age. So beyond 3 years, there is increase in velocity. The step length and the stride length, they increase. Step length means heel strike of one foot to the heel strike of other foot, and stride length means heel strike with the distance between the heel strike of same side, same limb. Then there is decreased cadence. The number of steps per minute decreases. The child walks slowly, slower than than they used to walk earlier, and the strides become more symmetric and reciprocal arm motion develops. An adult gait pattern usually sets in by 5 years of age, and by 7 years usually they have an adult gait pattern developed. So this is how we assess the any deviation from these parameters. These are standard guidelines, observations which have been seen, and it's almost uniform all over the world in every ethnicity. So to basically classify limping, to understand the causes of limp, we classify them in terms of being an acute limp or a chronic limp. So limping can be caused because of any reason causing a lot of pain, inflammation, any muscular disorder causing weakness or abnormal activity. That means either it's a weak muscle or it's an abdominally spastic muscle. Any bone and joint problem, of course, may cause limp, and leg length discrepancy. Agar पैर छोटा बड़ा है, so they can have limp. So the acute causes of limp include an infection, inflammation, trauma, neoplasm, they are quite obvious to you all. And chronic usually are DDH, developmental dysplasia of hip, Perthes, ligament discrepancies, cerebral palsies, avascular necrosis of some of the areas of bone, which is known as the OCD, osteochondritis dissecans, or Cole's disease, any neoplasm or slip capital femoral epiphysis, or tarsal coalition. That means fusion of the tarsal bones in the feet. So I won't be going into the details of all of it. I'll focus on the clinical diagnosis and how to approach a limping child, and the child may have anything. मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट की प्रेजेंटेशन बहुत एक्यूट है कि बहुत क्रॉनिक है, बच्चा सडनली 2 दिन से लिम्प कर रहा है, कि चाइल्ड हैज बीन लिम्पिंग फॉर लॉन्ग, चाइल्ड में बी लिम्पिंग सिंस द वॉकिंग एज, बच्चा 5 साल का हो गया बट ही मे स्टिल बी लिम्पिंग. सो दे विल द हिस्ट्री इटसेल्फ विल गिव यू लॉट ऑफ क्लूज टू द डायग्नोसिस कि what can be a possible diagnosis. Then again, whether the limp is painful or painless, it's again a very important factor in history which rules out and excludes many causes of limp. So most common painless causes are mostly congenital, developmental, neurological, hematological and metabolic. Painful are mostly trauma, infection, inflammation, tumor, hematologic and metabolic. Transient synovitis of hip again is a cause of painful hip, painful limb. Infective causes inflammatory, synovitis, any cause of hip impingement, slip capital femoral epiphysis, any kind of fractures or idiopathic condylosis of hip. So we will actually see cases, x-rays and the child, then you'll understand. And if we try and classify with this, so once a child comes, so first we ask the history. Of course, history, detailed history is very important, so we get an idea of the presentation, whether it's an acute presentation, a delayed presentation, whether it's a painful or a painless limp, what has been a temporal sequence of events, what has led to that limp. Then again, age. Age is again a very important factor because there are different causes and there are different diseases which present in specific age groups. So if the child is less than 4 or more, you'll at least have an idea कि हाँ बहुत common causes ये हैं, and you will probably not think of a Perthes or a Skiffy or any sports injuries, things like that. So less than 4 years, so mostly infections are very common. In fact, infections of joints and bones are very common. Dr. Brijesh, can you please mute? I think there is some disturbance.
Now I don't know how to mute. Is it okay, sir? Am I on mute now?
We can hear you, I think, but the disturbance is gone. So this is better. So less than 4 years, as we all said, more common causes are transient synovitis, septic arthritis, especially of hip, osteomyelitis, toddler's fractures. Toddler's fracture matlab spiral fractures or distal tibia, right? In kids more than 1.5 to 2 years of age, walking age. Then again, DDH can present early अगर child diagnosed हो जाता है. Then coxa vara, developmental coxa vara, cerebral palsy. Then inflammatory arthritis can present at at an early age. Then of course, spine should always be examined in a limping child. You never know if the child has a referred pain due to a discitis, or and then again always examine for proximal muscle weakness and exclude muscular dystrophies. Rare causes include leukemia and osteoblastoma. 4 to 10 years of age, transient synovitis of hip, septic arthritis, osteomyelitis. Infections is everywhere. Infection is a common cause and is always a differential diagnosis in every age. So keep that as a diagnosis, first diagnosis in any acute painful limp in any age, right? Septic arthritis, osteomyelitis, abscesses. These are very common problem. You will, if you at least rule out them, you will at least not do harm to any of the kid. So then again, Perthes, which presents as a painless limp, discoid meniscus of knee sometimes can present as a limp. They are usually painless. Leg length discrepancy, अगर पैर छोटा बड़ा है because of some trauma, infection, or just idiopathic shortening of one of the limb can lead to a limp in that age. Now, in a teenage, beyond pubertal age group, adolescent age group, a different set of problems comes in. Infections, of course, will remain there. Skiffy, slip capital femoral epiphysis is again common because they are mostly seen that they are more common in obese kids who have hormonal disorders. So they may have some problems in the growth plate of the head, of the femoral head. So these things, because of that, the head gradually slips out and can lead to a slip capital femoral epiphysis. So we'll see a case of that as well. Then again, hip dysplasia, subtle dysplasias where the hip is not displaced is not out of the socket. It is that just that the morphology of the hip is not normal. So they can present as a limp. Then idiopathic chondrolysis means because of some reason, unknown reason, there is cartilage damage either because of trauma or just because of without any precipitating factor, and that subtle damage in the cartilage incites a lot of inflammation in the joint, the hip joint, and there is a chain of events start where there is a lot of chondrolysis. The cartilage destruction starts and the child is in severe pain, acute onset pain, and you may have long-term consequences in terms of this decreased hip joint or even delayed arthritis. So again, we cannot expect to miss an idiopathic chondrolysis of hip. Then of course, repetitive use syndromes, avulsion fractures in active kids. FAI means femoral acetabular impingement, again is very common these days, is getting more and more common with more and more activity levels in the kids. Stress fractures, again athletic pubalgia, strains, sprains, snapping syndromes, osteochondritis dissecans. So these are common causes. A snapshot of this alone will give you a paradigm of all the possible causes you can think of, and at least if you have excluded these, you are probably not missing out on anything, right? And trust me, there are cases where you don't even find a cause. ऐसा नहीं है कि हर limping child में you find a cause, and most of the times then we label them as transient synovitis of hip, and it resolves on its own. So it's important to exclude the dangerous causes, the causes which can have long-term sequelae. So how to assess a child with a limp? So first we should know that it's an acute or a chronic onset, whether it's long-standing, painful or painless, and whether it's actual limp or a global growth disturbance. A cerebral palsy kid will have a global growth disturbance. That means a child, ever since they started walking, the parents will complain कि वो तो चलना ही ऐसे शुरू किया था, वो तो शुरू से ही toes पे चलता है, या शुरू से एड़ी पे चलता है, या there is some abnormality which was always there. So that indicates कि शायद इसको कुछ और problem है, and it's not probably related to the common things which you have thought of. A limp usually is कि जहाँ पे child पहले normal था and sudden onset, उसके gait में कोई फर्क पड़ गया है, and the child is like limping to one side. So this is the basic three things which you need to assess in a limping child. So of course history, as we discussed, age, body mass index, because why body mass index important. SCFE जो है, split capital femoral, they are mostly seen in obese kids. Childhood obesity is again is picking up, and we see a lot of obese kids. So they have higher chances of deformities in the limbs. In terms of Blount's disease is very common in obese kids. They may have early arthritis, early joint knee problems, ankle problems. Then they also have higher incidence of SCFE. Their capital epiphysis, जो femur head है, that slips out of the growth plate and goes posteromedially. So that is why BMI of a child is very important. More important in the teenage. Then again, onset of the limb, the duration, the progression, whether it's painful or not, right? Whether it's associated with fever, trauma, what are the aggravating factors, what are the relieving factors, what treatment has been taken, whether the milestones of the kid has been normal, whether there is a similar family history, what has been the past history, is the symptom recurring over a few months and years, and what treatment has been taken is again very important. So the foremost important thing we do in examination is an observational gait analysis. Whenever a child comes in our clinic, a thorough examination in a corridor for at least a good amount of distance, at least a corridor, this longer corridor is important to carefully assess what is going on. Now you can assess the motor strength of the child, and of course see the gait alteration. If the knee is touching, then you can also assess what is the status of the heel, whether it's touching or not, कहीं बच्चा toe walking तो नहीं कर रहा है, whether there is a rotational problem, बच्चा in toeing या out toeing के साथ तो नहीं चल रहा है. Then you examine by examining the child walking, you also get an idea of the trunk power, whether the pelvis is level or not, whether there is any swaying of trunk, whether there is a spinal deformity. Then again, Gowers sign, as you all know, is where we ask the child to get up from the sitting position. You should also ask the child to get up from a lying position. So that is a sitting and a lying Gowers sign. So that indicates a proximal muscle weakness. Then ask the child to squat and get up. Ask the child to sit cross-legged. So in fact, just by visiting, without even touching the child, you will have at least a rough idea if the hip is involved or not, what is the probable pathology. and do not forget to examine the spine and never forget to examine the shoes of the kid. अगर बच्चों का शूज या चप्पल या स्कूल के जो शूज वो मैक्सिमम टाइम पे पहनता है, अगर एक साइड से घिस रहे हैं कंपेयर टू द अदर साइड, दैट मे इटसेल्फ इंडिकेट कि बच्चे का या तो फुट फ्लैट है, मे हैव अ केबस फुट. So that is how important is the examination of the shoes. A basic local examination includes looking at it, inspection, palpation, moving the limbs, measuring for the shortening, and some special tests to assess specific deformities. So I'm not going into each of them. This is just to give you a idea कि a proper look, feel, move, measure is very important in all age group in any orthopedic problem. ठीक है, तो you should know कि if the abduction is limited, इसमें rotations की क्या हो रही है, how much is the flexion, what pathology is going on. You can easily make out from these tests. And special tests is like these are prone lying tests for bilateral hip problems where both the hips may have a flexion deformity. So and this is the Thomas test. Then again, examination also includes Trendelenburg test, which indicates a drooping pelvis on the affected side, shows incompetent abductor or a pathology which affects the fulcrum. So the abductor weakness may also cause a Trendelenburg gait or anything going wrong with the neck of the femur, either congenital coxa vara or neck of femur fracture, non-unions of neck of femur fractures, or a collapsed head of femur. So all that can lead to a Trendelenburg test positivity. Then strength testing is very important. Examine for strength of all muscles. This is more important for cerebral palsy case where you only look for spasticity. हमें पता होता है कि हाँ बच्चा spastic है, but it is more important to look for the strength, क्योंकि अगर बहुत spastic kit में आपने बिल्कुल उसकी spasticity कम करने के लिए if you lengthen the muscle and the strength is anywhere around 3, so the child will anyway after lengthening will come down to 2. तो वो जो toe walker था वो चला जाएगा, it will become a crouch gait. So it's very important to assess the strength as well. Then some provocative tests here, as we see here for the impingement. So this is the Patrick test, flexion, abduction, external rotation test for the sacroiliac joint and for the hip as well. And of course, never forget to examine the spine. So how do we work up? A basic clinical examination, and thereafter we do a blood workup, joint aspiration as per the clinical scenario. An ultrasound is important in the case, so these are non-invasive mostly except joint aspiration. Then of course we do a proper radiographic workup in terms of pelvis AP. Never forget to get a frog leg lateral in a child. Always get a frog leg lateral view. It's very easy to get. If possible, you can get a false profile view. Sometimes we may need to get an MRI to exclude a loss of blood supply, cause an avascular necrosis or a labral pathology, stress fracture, which may not be visible on an X-ray. Soft tissue injuries out there, and CT of course sometimes may also be required. So a limping child comes with a hip pain, limp, low-grade fever. There is a preceding viral infection like an upper respiratory tract infection or a gastroenteritis, a normal or a mildly elevated WBC or an ESR, NCRP, and the WBC count in the joint fluid is less than 5,000. So given this clinical scenario, what will be the most likely diagnosis? So a child with an acute limp, as we see here, it's painful but mildly painful. The fever is not much. There is a preceding viral illness. So this is a classical presentation of a transient synovitals of hip. Very common in presentation. It mimics septic arthritis, and very commonly you will see pediatricians and even orthopedic surgeons starting antibiotics straight away. So never do that unless the child is really toxic. अगर toxic है भी तो should always aspirate the joint, get blood cultures done, get a joint aspiration done, get the blood test done, and then start antibiotics अगर बच्चा बहुत toxic है, before you get the lab reports. And whenever there is doubt, it's always better to drain the joint. A child which presents with a hip pain, inability to ambulate, with an acute limb, severe pain, fever more than 101, WBC count more than 12,000, ESR more than 40, CRP raised, joint fluid more than 50,000, neutrophils more than 75% neutrophils, 50,000 total leukocyte count. This is a classical presentation of a toxic child who might be having an infected joint. So this is septic arthritis. Never wait for this to appear. इतना अगर symptoms हो रहे हैं, do not wait. बच्चों में cartilage बहुत जल्दी absorb होता है. Within 48 to 72 hours अगर pus joint में रह गया, you will see the cartilage just getting absorbed, and and we really can't do anything about it even if we drain the joint thereafter. So they can have permanent consequences. We will see a case of septic. What happens if the diagnosis is delayed? It may be an embarrassment, it may be a detrimental outcome, it may be disastrous consequences. So embarrassment में भी अगर आप toddler's fracture miss भी करते हो कोई problem नहीं है, long term consequences कुछ नहीं होते. Perthes भी miss करते हो तो there is nothing wrong, there is nothing wrong going to happen. बाद में भी पता चलेगा तो treatment same ही रहना है. Hemiplegia also. Then again detrimental outcome में osteomyelitis, benign tumors, inflammatory arthropathy, DDH, जिसमें कि बहुत लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज नहीं होने, अगर ट्रीटमेंट बाद 2 महीने 3 महीने बाद भी पता चल रहा है किसी और से, तो इट वोंट हार्म द किड. बट इफ यू मिस अ सेप्टिक आर्थराइटिस, ल्यूकीमिया, स्पाइन डिस्काइटिस, स्कीफी, these can destroy the joints, can have long term consequences, and permanently can even with treatment the child may not be able to have a normal life again. So that is why it is very important to not miss these 3-4 possibilities. Now we'll discuss some cases, very interactive cases. You can always unmute yourself and you can even ask questions. So this was only the presentation part. I did not go into the the theoretical parts of all of them. So we'll be discussing representative cases. So septic arthritis, as we see, neonatal osteomyelitis is again a very common problem. One of the very common things which we all see in pediatric orthopedics. So whenever the joint is intra-articular, like a hip, अगर उसमें osteomyelitis होता है, तो in those cases जो metaphysis है, that is within the capsule. So वहाँ से once the bone periosteum and the cortical breach is there, the pus from the metaphysis leaks into the joint and forms a septic arthritis. So ऐसे cases में बहुत जल्दी septic arthritis होती है. तो it starts from the bones, from an osteomyelitis and goes into a septic arthritis process. But when the metaphysis is not within the joint, that means like a proximal tibia, यहाँ पे it will only form a subperiosteal abscess. They have lesser chance of a septic arthritis. So distal femur, proximal femur, all these are intra-articular joints जहाँ पे कि intra-articular metaphysis, जहाँ पे कि metaphysis is within the capsule. ठीक है, तो वहाँ पे septic arthritis होने के चांसेस ज़्यादा होते हैं. इसीलिए hip की septic arthritis इतनी common, distal femur की knee की septic arthritis due to distal femur osteomyelitis is again common. Cocker's clinical criteria has been given to diagnose and differentiate septic arthritis from hip. So it says कि अगर कोई भी बच्चा नॉन वेट बेयरिंग के साथ आ रहा है, more than 38.5 डिग्री C, 101 डिग्री फ़ारेनहाइट के ऊपर अगर टेम्परेचर है, ESR more than 40 है, WBC more than 12,000 है, अगर ये 4 में से चारों पॉइंट है, there is 93% probability the child may be having a septic arthritis. So ये Cocker's criteria has been gold standard over many years, for decades, and still stands true. So this was a 7-month-old child who presented with very high-grade fever. So I was not in picture at this time. He presented to a pediatrician with a very high-grade fever, probably less movement on the same side on the right side. I think he was treated somewhere else with just antibiotics, lot of antibiotics, vancomycin and all, and an aspiration was tried by the orthopedic surgeon somewhere outside. So, 1 महीने के अंदर, as you can see here, you can compare both the sides. You can see the capital epiphysis already subluxing. You can see if you draw the lines here, you can see it's all centered on the left side. The head is going out. You can see the cortical thickening, the periosteal reaction, the sequestrum in the phones, and the widening of the metaphysis and the cortex and the diaphysis. So it's clear-cut osteomyelitis. That means we have missed the boat. The child probably had septic arthritis due to an osteomyelitis proximal femur, and only drainage, a formal drainage was not done, only a needle aspiration was done. As you can see here, the head is already going out. Now, the child presented to us at 9 months. So, at 9 months, we got the child in this condition. अगर आप इस कंडीशन में देखोगे, we cannot see the epiphysis. अगर आप देखोगे, femoral epiphysis already नहीं दिख रही है. ठीक है, ऑलरेडी ये osteomyelitis, the cortical, the involucrum जो बन रही है, that has settled, that has matured. अगर आप पहले से कंपेयर करोगे तो the cortical reaction has matured, the sequestrum has decreased, the involucrum has increased, and the head is clearly subluxing, is going out. The child still had fever, continuous fever. The ultrasound reports were all normal. He was told elsewhere that बच्चे में कुछ नहीं है. But you see here, I mean, this is the child before any surgical intervention. There is no other diagnosis. This is a telltale sign of osteomyelitis with an abscess with a septic arthritis hip. कैसे बच्चा आप देखो बिल्कुल पैर नहीं हिला रहा है, ठीक है. दिस इज स्यूडो पैरालिसिस. दिस इज कॉल्ड अ स्यूडो पैरालिसिस. लेफ्ट को मोड़ रहा है, राइट को नहीं मोड़ रहा है. दिस इज नथिंग बट सेप्टिक आर्थराइटिस. So despite ultrasound being normal, everyone saying that there is nothing abnormal, so the clinical local temperature was raised. They were all toxic signs. The child was continuously febrile for 2 months. And when we opened it, we find pus, we drained it, we grew Staph aureus, MRSA positive. And thankfully, in the next 1 or 2 months, with antibiotics and with the drainage, the infection settled. But I think we were already late. The child's hip has been lost. We have seen. Now what happens? इसमें देखो आप 9 months के beyond जब आ रहा है, इसमें already if we draw the lines, इसमें already hip dysplasia start हो गया. This is a sequelae of septic hip. ये है 1 year पे X-ray. ये दोनों X-ray 1 year पे हैं. So infection is settled. The child is comfortable. The child has just started to walk, but of course the head is out. The head is dissolved because the head is cartilaginous. We can't see it. The ossification is delayed. Now at 1.5 years, the same child. वही child को अब आप देखो कैसे 1.5 years में. So the child is absolutely normal with neuromuscular strength being normal. Everything is normal about the child. It's just that there is no head. The head is dislocated. So this is a sequelae of septic hip with a absent hip. So you see here how the hip is going out. So this is an unstable hip. So this is the telescopy test. I am doing the telescopic test on the right side, and it is painless, but the head is dislocated anteriorly. We got an MRI done, and see here the head is dislocated anteriorly. There is a small enlarge of cartilage which is irregular, very small, but that is how it looks in the MRI. It is not ossified, so we can't see it on the X-ray. The head was actually palpable anteriorly. When we went in during the surgery, where आप देखो यहाँ पे the head was actually palpable here. Okay, this is the head which we can see. And when we opened up the joint, this was the status. Can you see the irregular head, the cartilage which is already like destroyed, almost destroyed. There is a small, cauliflower-like of cartilage over which the child can walk. So the only aim of surgery now was to reconstruct the hip. The only hope was that if we put this head in, at least will become, grow in size, will ossify in the subsequent months, and the child can have a normal hip thereafter. So, but of course, it will never be a round hip because it's already partially destroyed, irregular, and the roundness of the hip is gone. So we did a complex hip reconstruction with pelvic osteotomy, femoral osteotomy, trying to contain the hip, and this was the final thing. So as we can see here, the head is now relocated. We did a pelvic Saltus osteotomy, an open reduction, proximal femur varus osteotomy. So the head is now relocated and the child is still in plaster. But of course, I wanted to emphasize through this case that something as common as septic arthritis in our scenario, in our Indian scenario, should never be missed. It's a sin. You cannot pardon yourself if you ever miss this, right? So I presented this case to sensitize you all about septic. Now the same child at 6 weeks of follow-up, the hip has become stable. The same hip is now stable. This is the examination under CIAM guidance, and the hip is now stable. But of course, we know that long-term sequelae will not be that good. The child may have a case now. This is another child who presented with a painless limb on the right side. No significant history of any trauma or fever, anything which which would lead us to an infective cause or an inflammatory cause. So this is again when we got the X-ray done, frog leg lateral and an AP view. This classical presentation of Perthes hips. As you can see here, this is an early onset Perthes. So there is hyperdensity there is sclerosis in the capital epiphysis. The other side is normal. So whenever you see this is very early onset Perthes. So what happens in these age is because of some reason the ascending branch of the medial circumflex, which is the major blood supply of the head, in some of the active kids it has been shown to be obliterated or is damaged because of some reason, and as this is the main blood supply, the head goes avascular. Now because of avascularity, the capital epiphysis, the cartilaginous parts, gradually they collapse. As you can see here, the same child at 5 years of age, you can see the capital epiphysis is already getting collapsed, the other side is normal, the metaphyseal cyst being formed. This shows that there is some revascularization going on. The body is attempting to make the blood supply available to the epiphysis, but of course we can't do much because the head is already collapsed. So the next intervention here would be to contain the head. Right, containment will again require some form of abduction brace. जैसे ऐसे में बच्चे को पहना कर चला सकते हैं. The child has to be kept non-weight bearing for 1 or 2 years, and we hope that the head, the roundness of the head, the blood supply of the head, that it recovers. So this is the classical presentation of a Perthes, also known as leg calf Percy disease or LCPD. Okay, so this is the same child at 6 years of age, walking with reasonable gait. He's obviously apprehensive because we have kept him non-weight bearing for many months. It is not painful. There is some restriction of the internal rotation, but you can see the limping child. What we do in these cases is to do a varus osteotomy, take a wedge out, and when you do a varus, the proximal femur goes into abduction and that contains. So the head basically moves into the socket, into the acetabulum. This is a simple surgery which is done most of the time. Sometimes we may need to add other procedures like a pelvic osteotomy or a shelf, depending on the age. There are several classification systems. We are not going into that. So these are the common surgical things, intervention which may need to be done. Now this is another child, 6 years, female, never took any treatment, presented to me at 6 years of age with this limb. Right, so it was completely painless. The child is walking. The femoral head can be felt in the left side buttocks, and the child never complained of pain. Of course, it has a short limb gait, has a Trendelenburg gait, has a unstable gait with instability on the left side. As you can see here, the head is out, was never diagnosed despite consulting so many doctors. Somehow this was missed for some reason. The head is dysplastic. The head is small in size compared to the normal size. The acetabulum also is dysplastic. If you see the acetabular index, 18 degree on the right side, it's 38 degrees on the left side. So this is a neglected developmental dysplasia of hip. So what we did here was to contain the hip. Of course, did an open reduction, did a Salter's osteotomy because the child was only 6 years of age, sorry, and we could contain the hip. This is at 4 months of age, after plaster removal, 4 months after surgery, and the hip is now stable. The femur osteotomy has united. So what you can see here is that you may see that the plate is longer. It's not long actually. It's sitting on the trochanteric apophysis. The apophysis is not ossified, but you can feel it during surgery. The cartilage is not ossified. That is why most of the things in pediatric orthopedics is, it's unossified. That is why there are higher chances of missing out of things. Same child at 4 months of age has just started walking with a normal gait. The leg is short because when we do this surgery, so we need to shorten the femur as well. So this is a varus derotation, along with that a shortening osteotomy of the femur, and along with that the pelvic osteotomy. But the shortening usually catches up later on, and within a year or two, the child has a normal leg. But the hip is stable now. Thankfully, she has a good range of motion, and we expect her to come back to a normal gait pattern. This is a teenage child, heavy as you can see. He's a relatively obese child. That is the importance of the BMI. So he presented with acute painful limb, a chronic the painful limb following a hit and run injury 8 months back. And as you can see here, when you ask the child to stand on the opposite side, which is the right side, the left side, the child is unable to do that. So probably this had something to do with the hip. But the diagnosis was missed for another 8 months, and when we examined the child had all classic features of, and when we flexed the hip was going into an obligatory external rotation. Hip अपने आप ही बाहर चला जाता था when you flex the hip. So flexion में usually it should come up, but it external rotates when there is something wrong with the morphology of the hip. So this was a case of a chronic SCFE, a slipped capital femoral epiphysis. It's again very common to miss them on a pelvic AP X-ray unless you get a frog leg lateral view. That is why I'm emphasizing on the need of a frog leg lateral view in these kids. So there are few lines which we draw in these kids. So this is the the cleans line. You see here, this would cause approximately 1/3 of the head, but here it's not crossing. So unless you make this line, you might miss a skiffy on an ATV. Then in the fogleg lateral, we calculate the slip angle, and of course, as you can see, it's a severe slip, approximately 60 to 70 degree of slip angle. So this is again a difficult problem because it has stabilized over a period of month, and a simple open reduction won't help. This needs osteotomy of the femur, of the neck of femur, to relocate it. It's a complex procedure which is known as the safe surgical dislocation and a reticular flap technique, where the reticular flap is elevated like this behind the neck of femur. The part of neck is osteotomized, and as you can see here, this is the blood supply. This retinacular flap has the blood supply. So this is preserved so that the head remains viable. The neck is shortened with an osteotomy, and they are fixed with screws. That is how the deformity of these stonic skiffy is corrected. So childhood opacity has multiple problems, can lead to multiple bone and joint issues, can damage the growth plate, can lead to early arthritis, higher risk of fractures, weak bones, osteomalacia, has higher chances of Brown's disease, painful flat foot, and of course anesthetic complications will be higher in a obese child. And this is another case, a 7-year-old female child presenting with an acute onset limp. She had a left-sided severe hip pain and a left knee pain for 3 months, and history of fall 2 months back, not a clear-cut history as such, it was a trivial fall at home. Examination revealed anterior tenderness and an antalgic gait with limp to the left side. So when we examined, the adduction and internal rotation was restricted and painful. If you see the blood parameters, nothing much to see here. There is the inflammatory pattern is not there, the infection is not there because the CRP is normal, ESR is normal, and CCP is negative. So we also rule out a rheumatoid process. B27 is normal, that means we have excluded juvenile angstpon. So what was this? So again, if you see the x-rays, nothing much on the x-ray. The joint space is preserved, the radiolucency is preserved, the hip is stable. No clear-cut diagnosis can be made on an x-ray. So of course such cases have two most important differential diagnoses: either a transient synovitis of hip where all investigations are normal, or there is something called as an idiopathic chondrolysis, which we discussed, where there is a cartilage damage and that incites a lot of inflammation and that precipitates a sequence of events. So this child on an MRI showed a fissuring in the cartilage. Can you see here the fissuring in the cartilage? So this shows that there was something going on in the cartilage which incited a lot of inflammation and caused that acute limp. So this is how. So this is a very subtle sign, and most of the things are just normal, and except synovitis you cannot see anything. So this was a case of idiopathic chondrolysis of hip. The child again, as you can see, at 7 months of age is fine, and trust me, no treatment was given. Only anti-inflammatory, just rest, ambulation as tolerated. So it's about just about identification of the correct case. Every case doesn't need to be admitted or intervene or treated with medicines, and just symptomatic treatment sometimes suffice if you make a good clinical diagnosis. Now this is a 14-month-old child. You can observe the gait of the child. कैसे चल रहा है बच्चा? And trust me, he was a baby of a gynecologist in Gurgaon. At 14 months of age, he consulted to orthopedic surgeon. Was always told that this is normal. This is normal bowing of the legs, and this is physiological bowing, which we all see. This is not physiological. Whenever you see a bowing in a child where there is an acute angle formed in the proximal part of leg, right? Any cause of acute angulation in the proximal leg is not physiological bowing, right? So this is a classical presentation of something called as a Blount's disease. This is an infantile Blount's disease. If you get the parameters, all alkaline phosphatase, calcium, vitamin D, PTH, calcium, everything will be normal. Now, as you know, it's a gynecologist child, so anyway, he was well fed. There was no nutritional problem. The blood parameters were all normal. This was an infantile Blount. Now, if you get an X-ray, this was the full-length X-ray of the child. We calculate the metadiaphyseal angle, and this is classical presentation. Metadiaphyseal angle more than 16 degree is the classical presentation of a Blount's disease. So it can present in infancy, can have a delayed presentation as well. And because it's why it is important to diagnose Blount's, because they usually progress. It keeps on progressing, the deformity keeps on increasing. A physiological bow leg will usually correct spontaneously with supplements. A rickets will correct with supplements. All other probable cause of bowing will correct with supplements, and with age it will gradually correct and the legs will straighten out. These the Blount's do not correct, and they need to be observed. And beyond 2 to 2.5 years of age, they need some kind of guided growth procedure, some surgical intervention to stop the deformity, to correct the deformity, and later on they even have higher chances of recurrence. What has been seen in these Blount's kids is that they have an advanced bone age. बच्चा 8 to 9 years में रहेगा, लेकिन उसकी bone age शायद 10 to 12 years की है. So these kids they mature early. Their bone age is more advanced. तो जब भी हम इनमें कोई ग्रोथ प्रोसीजर्स प्लान करते हैं, तो वी नीड टू टेक केयर कि इसमें Blount's है, एंड वी कीप सम मार्जिन ऑफ एरर कि हम वी स्टार्ट अर्ली. क्योंकि अगर हम प्लानिंग में गड़बड़ कर देंगे एंड वी काइंड ऑफ फ्यूज अर्ली एंड बच्चे की ग्रोथ ऐसी नहीं बची है, तो वो डिफॉर्मिटी मे नॉट करेक्ट. So that is the important thing regarding Blount's. It was infantile Blount's. There were no stigmata of rickets. Rickets is not there, and you don't see so much of metatarsal angle in rickets and a physiological bone. Now this is again a 4-year-old child, male child, was referred by a pediatrician for this kind of slapping gait. You just see the child walking. How is he walking? So the X-ray here shows normal wrist growth plate, normal metaphysis, no evidence of rickets. You just observe them. Okay, genu valgum hai. Yes, there is some amount of genu valgum, but it is not that significant. So what is wrong with the child? Why is he walking like this? If you take a careful history and examination, just see the way he is getting up from the sitting position. This is the lying Gowers sign. Just see the way the child is getting up from lying position. He is literally climbing on himself. This is Gowers sign. When you see this, it rings a bell in your mind that this is something abnormal. So this is classic of a proximal muscle myopathy. There is some amount of truncal and a proximal muscle weakness of the thigh and the trunk muscles. And this child also had difficulty climbing stairs one by one. Usually kids at this age, they just run up these stairs. This child couldn't. ये अपने हाथ से पैर से एक-एक करके stairs climb करता था. So the child came for a deformity, for an abnormal gait, but the child was found to have a muscular dystrophy. Right. So just clinical examination in the clinic is so it's so rewarding to diagnose it. But you don't even need a penny, एक पैसे का टेस्ट कराने की जरूरत नहीं to make this diagnosis. This is diagnostic, classical. But yes, when you make a diagnosis, you try to make out, find the type of muscular dystrophy which is, and because that has bearing over the prognosis. Chris Becker said Duchenne hai. There are other types of muscular dystrophies which can present. So, but the basic presentation will be like this. So of course this child required other testing for the muscles, EMG, CPK values, then genetic testing, for the dystrophin gene and other things were required. Now this is another child who came for this gait. The pediatrician had referred for this, just abnormal gait. Ultrasound was normal, no history, significant history, maybe a fall at home, because बच्चों में आप history ले ही नहीं पाते हो बच्चा गिरा कि नहीं गिरा, क्योंकि वो आपके absence में गिर जाता है. Now you can see how the child is walking. There was some amount of tenderness in the hip, थोड़ा सा antalgic gait था, बच्चा painful limb के साथ चल रहा था, थोड़ा pain था बच्चों में. The X-rays were normal. So we did nothing. We only observed, gave anti-inflammatory, and within 10 days we will see the child running. No treatment was given, just observation, some anti-inflammatory for 4-5 days, and the child is fine. So this is a transient sign of septic. Okay, a non-toxic appearance, nothing to make us think of septic. This was transient sign of septic, 1.5 years of age. Now, hip sports injuries in children and adolescents is again getting more and more common, and there are some causes which can lead to an acute onset or a chronic limb. So kids playing football, basketball, volleyball, kho-kho, all kinds of games. So they may land up with some amount of soft tissue injuries. One of the two common things which we see are any kinds of strains and sprains of the muscles around the hip. Can be an iliopsoas strain, can be an hamstring strain, then rectus strain. So all that is common. And coxus saltans is the snapping, is the there can be an internal snapping or an external snapping. Internal snapping is mostly because of the iliopsoas snapping over the iliopectineal eminence. They usually complain of some form of pain in the groin, or you can actually feel them. They are usually painless but may become painful by repetitive snapping. So you can actually hear them, you can actually feel them. External wala jo hai, that means where the iliotibial band basically snaps over the greater trochanter. So this is external snapping. So these two, if it becomes painful, can cause limp. So clinical examination usually suffice, and they usually do not need any major intervention and may improve just with anti-inflammatory. Now, kids who frequently fall, adolescent age group, high-end athletes, those who are playing highly active games, can have apophyseal avulsions. The more common ones are the AIIS avulsions and the ischial tuberosity avulsions. You can see this. This is the anterior inferior iliac spine, and this is the ischial tuberosity का जो apophysis है. There is an epiphysis and there is an apophysis, right? So this is an apophyseal avulsion. तो ये दो सबसे कॉमन है, AIIS avulsions and iliac tuberosity. So this avulsion. These two are more common. You can forget the rest of these. They can be painful. They can cause hip impingement. Can have associated labral tears. So they need to be identified on X-rays, or even sometimes CT scan may be required. Less than 2 centimeter displacement, we can just observe them. More than 2 centimeters displacement, we may need to fix them. So sometimes they may require fixation. Because AIIS, when it malunites, can impinge on the femur and cause an femoroacetabular impingement or a pincer kind of impingement. So we'll be going into that as well. So what is femoroacetabular impingement? Any cause of any abnormality on the femur side, femoral head side, or the acetabulum side, which prevents the full completion of the full range of motion, the extremes of movement, can cause impingement. Maybe because of a very deep socket, or a femur head which is not round and impinges. You can see here there are two types, cam and pincer. So you can see here the femur head is oblong here, has a superolateral bump. So in deep flexion and in external rotation, it is literally banging on the acetabular cartilage. As you can see here, over a period of time, this is cam impingement. It causes chondral injury, can also cause labral injuries. Now in a pincer, it is usually because of the acetabular overgrowth, and there is over coverage of the acetabulum. So they can cause labral injury because there is over coverage of the acetabulum. They impinge on the femur neck and cause labral injuries. So all of them can be painful. Both of them can be painful, but the appropriate cause needs to be ruled out. So there are some signs on the X-rays. I won't be going to the neck. This is called as the pistol grip deformity. This is the normal hip, this is an abnormal hip. Whenever you see the epiphysis going beyond into the neck like this, so this is a pistol grip deformity. This indicates a cam morphology, the bump. So whenever the hip goes like this touches here and causes impingement. There are some angles which we draw. So there is an increased offset. We draw alpha beta angles, but you can just leave it. So a very active kid, sports with a very high sports activity level, can have these causes as a cause of limp. So this is a normal acetabulum. What we see in an abnormal acetabulum is a crossover sign. I think I'll just skip this. So this is a normal acetabulum. When there is a crossover sign, then the anterior and posterior crosses on an X-ray. This is a crossover sign and indicates a pincer. That means a retroverted acetabulum and an over-covered acetabulum. So an assessment of these, FAI, that means the femoroacetabular impingement, is from the history. The patient complains of a typical C signs, make this C and around the groin. So this is classical of a deep interior pain within the groin. There can be pain around the greater trochanter, or can be posterior as well. Flexion, adduction, internal rotation is classic of a impingement because of cam morphology. Sometimes we need to, if it is symptomatic, if it is affecting the daily activities, affecting the range of motion, we might need to do a safe surgical dislocation and correct the offset. So this is the bump I was talking about. We shave it off from here. So we need to preserve the cartilage, shave off the extra bone, preserving the retinal blood supply flap. So now again the cam morphology or irregular head can be because of a Perthes, a sequelae of Perthes, where the head shape is abnormal. मैंने Perthes का केस दिखाया, जब वो बच्चा 11-12 साल का होगा, they will have an abnormal shape, a mushroom shaped head. So sometimes we may need to do a femoral head reduction osteotomy to reshape the head to make it round so that there is no impingement. So this is a femoral head reduction osteotomy. And the same can be done arthroscopically. If there is a small cam lesion, it can just be shaved off with a burr. Right. So this is a mini way of treating the same thing.